Have you ever been mocked for being too kind, too understanding, too forgiving? Have you watched people take advantage of your good nature, laugh behind your back, call you weak because you refuse to retaliate? Maybe you work with someone who constantly undermines you, a neighbor who spreads rumors, or a family member who belittles everything you do. You stay calm. You try to be reasonable. And what happens? They see it as weakness. They push harder. They laugh at your kindness like it is some kind of joke. You lie awake at night replaying their words, feeling that burning mix of anger and humiliation, wondering if maybe they are right. Maybe you are too soft. Maybe kindness really is weakness in a world that rewards cruelty. But what if I told you that nearly 2,000 years ago, the most powerful man in the world faced this exact struggle? What if I told you that Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, commander of legions, ruler of millions, was also mocked for his kindness? And what if I told you that his response to his enemies was so devastating, so complete, that it changed the course of history and continues to inspire people to this very day? Today we are going to explore something that will transform how you see conflict, enemies, and the true nature of strength. By the end of this video, you will discover why Marcus Aurelius believed that the greatest way to destroy your enemies was not through revenge, not through violence, not through crushing them with power, but through something far more radical and infinitely more powerful. And the final insight, the one we will reach at the end, will fundamentally change how you approach every difficult person in your life. This is not just ancient philosophy. This is a weapon that works today, right now, in your workplace, in your family, in every relationship where you face hostility. Stay with me because what Marcus Aurelius understood about human nature and the psychology of conflict is more relevant now than ever before. Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 AD into a world of brutal politics, constant warfare, and ruthless power struggles. He became emperor in 161 AD, inheriting an empire plagued by plague, famine, economic crisis, and enemies on every border. The Germanic tribes were invading from the north, the Parthian Empire threatened from the east, and within Rome itself, senators plotted, generals schemed, and rivals waited for any sign of weakness. And here is what made Marcus different from almost every other emperor before or after him. He was a philosopher. He spent his nights writing personal reflections that would later become known as Meditations, one of the most influential philosophical works ever written. But this was not some abstract intellectual exercise. Marcus was writing these thoughts while commanding armies on frozen battlefields, while dealing with treacherous advisors, while facing people who wanted him dead. His philosophy was forged in the fire of real conflict with real enemies who posed real threats to his life and empire. Now imagine being Marcus Aurelius. You have absolute power. You could have anyone who mocked you, challenged you, or opposed you, executed with a single word. The Roman emperors before him had done exactly that. Caligula murdered anyone who displeased him. Nero killed his own mother. Domitian created an atmosphere of such terror that senators feared for their lives every day. But Marcus Aurelius chose a different path, and people thought he was weak. They whispered about it in the Senate. They questioned his authority in the military camps. Some of his own generals doubted whether a philosopher had the stomach for the harsh realities of power. When he showed mercy to rebels who had tried to overthrow him, when he forgave officials who had stolen from the treasury, when he treated defeated enemies with respect and dignity, many Romans thought he was making a catastrophic mistake. They laughed at his kindness. They saw his Stoic principles as naive idealism that would get him killed. They waited for him to fail, for his enemies to destroy him, for his softness to bring down the empire. But here is what happened instead. Marcus Aurelius ruled for 19 years, one of the longest reigns of any Roman emperor during that turbulent century. He successfully defended the empire against massive invasions, dealt with one of the worst plagues in Roman history, navigated constant political intrigue, and when he died, he was mourned across the empire as one of the greatest emperors Rome had ever known. So how did a man who was mocked for his kindness not only survive but thrive in one of the most violent, cutthroat environments in human history? How did his approach to enemies prove more effective than the cruelty and ruthlessness of emperors who came before and after him? The answer lies in understanding what Marcus Aurelius truly meant when he wrote about how to deal with those who wrong us. If you are enjoying this exploration of Marcus Aurelius and his revolutionary approach to conflict, make sure to hit that subscribe button. This channel is dedicated to bringing you the wisdom of Stoic philosophy applied to real-life situations you face today. We dive deep into Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, and other Stoic thinkers, showing you how their insights can transform your relationships, your career, your inner peace. Subscribe now so you do not miss our upcoming videos on Stoic techniques for anxiety, building unshakable confidence, and finding meaning in difficult times. Let me read you something Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal while on campaign against Germanic tribes who were literally trying to kill him. He wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." Think about that. The Emperor of Rome, facing actual life-threatening enemies, begins his day by preparing himself mentally to encounter difficult people. But notice what he does next. He does not write, and therefore I will crush them. He does not write, and therefore they deserve to suffer. Instead, he writes, "But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but the same mind, and possessing a share of the divine. And so none of them can hurt me. No one can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I feel angry at my relative or hate him. We were born to work together like feet, hands and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower. To obstruct each other is unnatural. To feel anger at someone, to turn your back on him, these are obstructions." This is where most people completely misunderstand Marcus Aurelius. They think he is saying to be a doormat, to accept mistreatment, to passively allow people to walk all over you. But that is not what he is saying at all. Marcus is describing a psychological weapon so sophisticated that most people never learn it. He is describing how to maintain complete inner freedom regardless of what anyone does to you. Think about what happens in a typical conflict. Someone insults you, betrays you, tries to undermine you. Your immediate reaction is anger, hurt, the desire for revenge, and in that moment they control you. Your emotional state is now in their hands. You cannot stop thinking about them. You lie awake, planning what you will say or do. You replay the situation over and over. They occupy your mind rent-free. You have given them power over your inner peace. Marcus Aurelius understood something crucial about human psychology. The person who can remain calm, rational, and kind in the face of hostility has an enormous advantage. Why? Because they are thinking clearly while their enemy is clouded by emotion. They can see the situation objectively while their enemy is trapped in reactive patterns. They maintain their dignity and self-respect while their enemy degrades themselves through their own behavior. But there is something even more powerful happening here, something that goes to the very heart of what it means to destroy an enemy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Read that again slowly. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. This is not about being passive. This is about winning on a completely different level. When someone treats you badly, and you respond with integrity, calm, and even kindness, several things happen simultaneously. First, you refuse to give them the reaction they want. People who mistreat others are usually seeking some kind of response, validation of their power over you, evidence that they got under your skin, the satisfaction of seeing you upset. When you deny them that reaction, when you remain unshaken, it creates a profound psychological effect. They expected you to get angry, to retaliate, to sink to their level. Your refusal to do so confuses and often frustrates them. Second, you force them to confront their own behavior. When you respond to cruelty with consistent kindness, to betrayal with continued integrity, it holds up a mirror. Their ugliness becomes more obvious in contrast to your composure. This is deeply uncomfortable for most people. It is much easier to justify bad behavior when the other person is also behaving badly. But when you maintain the high ground, they are left alone with their actions and their conscience if they have one. Third, you demonstrate strength, not weakness. It takes no strength to lash out when hurt. A child can do that. An animal can do that. It is pure instinct. But to feel anger, to feel hurt, to have the power to retaliate, and to consciously choose a better path, that requires tremendous strength. Real power is not the ability to harm others. Real power is the ability to control yourself. Marcus Aurelius commanded legions. He could have had anyone killed. That he chose mercy and reason instead of violence demonstrated far greater power than any act of revenge could have. Before we go further, I want to ask you something, and I really want you to think about this because your answer matters, not just for this video, but for your own life. Think about someone who has wronged you recently. Maybe they mocked your kindness, took advantage of your trust, or tried to make you look bad. How did you respond? Did you feel that pull toward anger, that desire to hurt them back? Did you imagine scenarios where you got revenge, where you proved them wrong, where you made them suffer? Write in the comments, "I have felt that pull." Just that sentence. Because acknowledging this is the first step towards something better. And your comment might help someone else realize they are not alone in this struggle. Thousands of people watch these videos feeling the same thing you feel. Your simple comment could be the thing that helps them understand they are not weak for feeling this way. So go ahead, pause right now, and write, "I have felt that pull. I will wait." Now let us talk about what Marcus Aurelius actually did with his enemies, because this is where theory meets reality. One of the most dramatic examples involved a man named Avidius Cassius. Cassius was one of Marcus's most trusted generals, a brilliant military commander who had won important victories for Rome. But in 175 AD, while Marcus was dealing with Germanic invasions in the north, false rumors spread that the emperor had died. Cassius immediately declared himself emperor and convinced the eastern legions to support his claim. This was not just political maneuvering. This was treason, punishable by death. When Marcus learned what had happened, he was not dead, obviously, and he had every legal and moral right, according to Roman law, to execute Cassius and everyone who had supported him. His advisors urged him to do exactly that. Make an example of them. Show the empire what happens to traitors. Crucify them. Burn them alive. Display their bodies as a warning. But Marcus Aurelius did something completely unexpected. He wrote a letter to the Senate saying that he hoped to bring Cassius back alive so he could pardon him. He said he wanted the opportunity to forgive this betrayal, to show Cassius mercy, and to demonstrate that the Stoic principles he believed in were not just words but could actually govern how an emperor dealt with the worst kind of treachery. He even worried that Cassius would be killed before Marcus could pardon him, which would deprive him of the chance to show this extraordinary mercy. Think about what this meant. Marcus was saying that his own desire to demonstrate philosophical principles was more important than satisfying the very natural human desire for revenge against someone who had literally tried to steal his empire and would have certainly killed him if successful. As it happened, Cassius was assassinated by his own officers before Marcus reached him. They cut off his head and sent it to Marcus as a gift, expecting to be rewarded. But Marcus refused to even look at it. He ordered it buried immediately. Then, and this is the crucial part, he pardoned everyone who had supported Cassius. He did not execute the soldiers who had declared for the rebel emperor. He did not punish the senators who had been prepared to accept Cassius as the new ruler. He did not confiscate property or destroy families. He forgave them all. Can you imagine? In a time when emperors regularly massacred thousands over far lesser offenses, Marcus Aurelius responded to an attempt to overthrow him with mass forgiveness. And here is what happened next. The empire did not descend into chaos, as his advisors feared. People did not see this as weakness to be exploited. Instead, Marcus's moral authority became unassailable. How do you rebel against an emperor who responds to rebellion with forgiveness? How do you justify violence against a ruler who treats even his worst enemies with dignity? Marcus had destroyed the threat, not by killing his enemies, but by transforming the entire moral landscape of the conflict. He had demonstrated that the principles he lived by were stronger than fear, stronger than violence, stronger than revenge. But Marcus Aurelius went even further in his understanding of how to deal with enemies. He wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil.'" Notice the phrase, "due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil." Marcus is not excusing bad behavior. He is diagnosing it. He understood something that modern psychology has confirmed. People who hurt others are themselves hurt. People who act with cruelty are suffering from their own inner torment. People who need to dominate, humiliate, or destroy others are trying to fill a void within themselves. This does not make their behavior acceptable. It does not mean you should tolerate abuse, but it does change how you understand what is really happening. When someone mocks your kindness, they are revealing their own poverty of spirit. When someone takes advantage of your trust, they are demonstrating their own inability to build genuine relationships. When someone tries to hurt you, they are acting from their own pain. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come from it." If you understand that, you will feel sympathy rather than outrage or anger. Your sense of good and evil may be the same as theirs, or near it, in which case you have to excuse them. Or your sense of good and evil may differ from theirs, in which case they are misguided and deserve your compassion. Either way, the result is compassion. This is the most revolutionary idea in all of Stoic philosophy, and it is the answer to our original question about how Marcus Aurelius destroyed his enemies. He destroyed them by refusing to see them as enemies. He destroyed the enmity itself. Think about what enmity requires. It requires two people locked in opposition, each seeing the other as a threat, each justified in their hostility, each convinced of their own righteousness. It is a closed system that perpetuates itself. You hurt me, so I hurt you. So you hurt me more, so I hurt you more. And on until one of you is destroyed or both of you are consumed by bitterness. Marcus Aurelius broke that cycle by refusing to participate in it. When someone attacked him, he asked why they felt the need to do so. When someone betrayed him, he considered what fear or desire motivated that betrayal. When someone mocked him, he recognized it as a defense mechanism of someone who felt threatened by principles they did not understand. And this is where the true genius of his approach becomes clear. By responding to hostility with rational compassion, Marcus did several things at once. He protected his own inner peace because he was not consumed by anger or the desire for revenge. He maintained his own integrity because he continued acting according to his principles, regardless of how others acted. He often transformed his enemies because consistent kindness in the face of hostility is incredibly difficult to resist over time. And he built a reputation that made him nearly impossible to truly defeat, because how do you defeat someone who will not hate you? There is a story that when Marcus Aurelius died in 180 AD after 19 years of rule, people across the empire wept. Not because they feared what would come next, though they should have because his son Commodus turned out to be a disaster, but because they had lost a leader they genuinely loved. Think about that. The most powerful man in the world, who had every reason and every opportunity to rule through fear and violence like most emperors did, instead ruled in such a way that when he died, people grieved not from fear of change, but from genuine affection and respect. That is how you destroy enemies. Not by defeating them, but by making it impossible to remain your enemy. Not by crushing them, but by elevating yourself so far above the conflict that enmity becomes irrelevant. Not by winning the battle, but by transforming the battlefield itself. Now let me be very clear about something, because I know what some of you are thinking. This does not mean accepting abuse. This does not mean staying in toxic relationships. This does not mean allowing people to harm you or others. Marcus Aurelius was not passive. He fought wars when necessary. He enforced laws. He protected the empire. He made difficult decisions that sometimes resulted in people being punished for their crimes. The difference is that he did these things from a place of reason and duty, not from emotion or ego. He did what was necessary, not what would satisfy his anger. He acted from principle, not from the desire for revenge. There is a profound difference between protecting yourself and seeking revenge, between establishing boundaries and harboring hatred, between responding appropriately to wrongdoing and being consumed by the need to hurt those who hurt you. So how do you apply this in your own life when you do not have the power of a Roman emperor, when you are not commanding legions or governing an empire, when you are just trying to deal with a difficult co-worker or a toxic family member or someone who has genuinely wronged you? Here is what Marcus Aurelius would tell you. First, recognize that the other person's behavior is ultimately their problem, not yours. They can insult you, betray you, try to harm you, but they cannot force you to become like them. They cannot touch your inner character unless you allow it. You always have a choice about who you will be, regardless of who they are. Second, understand that anger and the desire for revenge hurt you far more than they hurt your enemy. Marcus wrote, "How much more harmful are the consequences of anger and grief than the circumstances that arouse them." Every minute you spend consumed by thoughts of revenge is a minute stolen from your peace, your joy, your life. Your enemy may not even be thinking about you, but you are giving them free rent in your mind. Third, respond from your highest self, not your wounded ego. When someone treats you badly, pause before reacting and ask yourself, what would the best version of me do right now? Not the version that wants to hurt them back, but the version I respect, the version I want to be, the version that acts from wisdom rather than emotion. That version might set firm boundaries. That version might walk away. That version might respond with unexpected kindness. But whatever that version does, it does so with dignity intact. Fourth, recognize the shared humanity even in those who wrong you. This is perhaps the hardest part, but it is also the most liberating. The person who hurt you is struggling with something. They are afraid or wounded or lost. This does not excuse their behavior, but it does help you see them as a flawed human being rather than a monster. And seeing them that way protects you from becoming monstrous yourself. Finally, focus on being someone worth respecting rather than on getting respect from others. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. You cannot control how others see you or treat you, but you can control who you actually are. And in the end, that is all that really matters. The ultimate revenge, the ultimate way to destroy your enemies, is to become so grounded in your own integrity, so clear in your own principles, so unshakable in your own character, that their attacks simply cannot reach you. Not because you have built walls and become hard, but because you have built depth and become strong. Not because you do not care about anything, but because you care about the right things. Not because you are invulnerable to pain, but because you refuse to let pain turn you into something you are not. Marcus Aurelius lived this every day for 19 years in the most powerful position in the ancient world, surrounded by people who would have gladly killed him to take his place, constantly facing genuine threats and real enemies. And his response was to write in his private journal, reminding himself to be kind, to be rational, to remember the humanity of even those who opposed him. He understood that the real battle is not between you and your enemies. The real battle is between who you could become and who you choose to be. Your enemies, your critics, the people who mock your kindness, they are presenting you with a choice. Will you become like them? Will you let their cruelty justify your own? Will you let their smallness make you small? Or will you do what Marcus Aurelius did and respond to hatred with wisdom, to cruelty with integrity, to mockery with unshakable self-respect? The choice is always yours. No one can take that from you. That is your true power. That is how you destroy your enemies without destroying yourself in the process. By being so thoroughly, completely, undeniably better than they are that their attacks become irrelevant. If this video has given you something valuable, if these ideas from Marcus Aurelius have shifted something in how you see your own conflicts and challenges, do me a favor. Leave a like, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more deep explorations of Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to consider that there might be a better way than the anger and revenge that feel so natural, but ultimately destroy us. Marcus Aurelius wrote these words nearly 2,000 years ago, while sitting in a military tent on a frozen battlefield facing enemies who wanted him dead. You are the universe experiencing itself. Remember that the next time someone mocks your kindness, you are not weak. You are participating in something much larger and more important than their small-minded cruelty. You are choosing to be human in the highest sense of the word. And that choice, repeated day after day in the face of whatever life throws at you, that is how you win. Not by destroying your enemies, but by becoming indestructible yourself.